And now we are in front of the ruins of this temple, which is behind. This temple here is the temple of the imperial worship. Here we have the temple of Apollo, which the ruins show coming in. You remember Apollo's temple. This is Apollo's temple, and this is this temple, the temple of the imperial worship. Now, both these two temples overlook this area. And my question is, could you describe this area here according to your personal today experience from your city?
Courtyard.
Courtyard.
Agora.
Make the comparison. It's too big to be courtyard. Yeah. You said agora. What do you mean with that term? That term is foreigner to you.
Yeah,
Your
we
city,
buy
like a
banana.
capital.
We buy a banana.
Like a capital? Like,
I would like a proper English description.
Yeah.
Public square.
And not tricks.
Public square.
Public square.
Public square.
Oakland Mall. I don't know.
This is the public square. Now, Greeks call the public square agora, and Romans forum. Okay? We saw the public square of Athens. And here we have the public square of Corinth, which is centuries later after that of Athens. In the public square, we have the religious authority. So, in the case of Corinth, we don't have one, but two cathedrals. Look them here. We have temples here. We have all that in the administrative section. Down here we have the courthouse, and here in this corner we have some commercial activity. And this is what we are going to see next. The heart of the public life of the city. Yeah,
They all lived up there.
yes.
So did someone take food up there, water up there?
This place was very rich itself and had the slaves were responsible to mobilize the temple of all what the temple needed. I would like us to see again this reconstruction. Look this staircase here. You see this staircase here? Yeah, this staircase here used to be there. And in both sides of this path, we see temples. Entering in the square, which is after, from here, we enter through the religious section. Let's move a little bit further because my colleague is there.
We do not sit on the end. That's all I hear him saying all the time. Is this spot okay?
Look, remains of the marble all around you. There used to be the staircase, and here you are in front of the ruins of these temples. Okay? From there, all the way to the end of the excavation is this section. which is the administrative section. Here in Corinth, we have two levels of administration. We have the lower level, which was very strong, was a mega city and needed a very strong municipal bureaucracy, and the higher level, which was represented here by the Roman proconsul. Now, both the two levels of administration, Πας μωρέ.
Έχεις να μου πάρεις το μέρος, εγώ έφτασα πρώτη. Hello
Όχι,
everybody.
εγώ θα πήγαινα εκεί, εσύ μου πήρες το μέρος.
How are you?
Very good. Colleague of mine
Hello there.
and classmate.
Classmate. Don't tell which age, please.
No, I was the older in the
That's why.
I was the older.
Εγώ να πάω εκεί τώρα.
Να πας εσύ, δεν το χρειαζόμαστε.
Thank you, Constantine. Χάρηκα που σε είδα.
Και εγώ.
Please, this way.
No,
Sorry
κάτσε
for
πήγαινε
that.
από εδώ, βρε.
Sorry for interrupting.
Michaelia, we are now at this area, and we have on our right-hand side here the administrative section, which is called Praetorium. Praetorium. Now, in front of the Praetorium, you see a fence dividing the square in two parts. The part in which we are, which is the public part, and a yard in front of the Praetorium. The Praetorium yard was controlled area and military area, because during the day when the Roman officers were working in their offices, their bodyguards were in the yard waiting for them and guarding them. The phrase Praetorium yard in the New Testament is mentioned once, only once, in Mark's Gospel, when is described the trial of Jesus Christ. And he said that only Jesus was brought in the Praetorium yard while the crowd stayed out. This fence is here. Look, this foundation here goes all the way to the white marble. We are in the public section. Now remember the Bema. The Bema in Athens was the little platform one step higher for the speaker. Romans came, turned the Agora into forum, and the Bema was turned to the grandstand of themselves. Is not anymore a place for the subjects, but is the grandstand for the manifestation of the conqueror. The Bema is a tradition which is kept in several Western countries, and among them is your country. Every July 4th in Washington DC is erected the grandstand of the American president, the Bema of the American president. And from this grandstand, the American president can participate to the festival. Sometimes from this grandstand and after the festival, the American president decorates prominent American citizens like the war veterans and people who were prized before with the Nobel Prize. Yes or not?
Yes.
Yes. That comes from antiquity, but has an essential difference with the Roman time. The American president today is an elected prominent American. Romans that time were conquerors. And Romans were not interested at all to find good citizens to decorate them. They were looking for something else. They were looking for people ready to kneel in front of them willingly. they were looking for collaborators. And after the festival, the collaborators of them were brought in front of the grandstand, the Bema, to be rewarded. And the entire city had to cheer for them and to clap, although the city hated them more than the Romans. But nobody had the right to express any negative feeling for them. In the case that happened, this person was grasped and was brought also in front of the grandstand, in front of the Bema. And if he was proved an enemy of the Romans, there, in front of the eyes of the entire city, he was badly humiliated. The grandstand, the Bema, is not replacing in any case the court of justice. Never in front of the Bema came any case of the penal justice. Imagine and think about the American president on the grandstand. The question in a court is, tell us about your crime. Tell us what have you done. The question in front of the grandstand is different. The question is, show us your identity. Are you a friend of us or an enemy? And bring proofs for that. Prove that you are a friend of us. Clear? This term is translated into your language in many different ways. The most common is judgment seat. That is not only totally wrong, but also is a term which confuses two different cultures. That comes from the Old Testament, comes from the Hebrew culture. You have been in Israel and you have visited the city of Dan, the Tel Dan, or not?
Yeah.
You have been. Then you remember the city walls of 8th century BC. And you remember the gate, and beside the gate, outside of the city, facing not the city, you saw the judgment seat of the king of Israel, which was for him to execute the judicial authority. Because the judicial authority in Israel was on the same person who had also the administrative authority, the king. The Greco-Romans never had something like this. The Greco-Romans had courts of justice. And we don't speak in the Greco-Roman culture about judgment seat. The grandstand, the Bema, never became a judgment seat. Never the penal law came in front of this place. There we see personal relations with the authority and nothing else. Negative, positive, but personal relations with the authority. Now we walk to see the Bema of a Roman capital. I would like you to come a little bit closer because I would like you to see this concrete line here. This concrete line here marks the end of the marble pavement, which was on this side. So on the other side we have a mosaic. Now, all around the mosaic, you see gray marble seats, benches, well decorated. Behind them, you see white marble columns, which were all around. In between of these columns were wooden boards fixed. And so the people who were sitting on these benches on pillows could put their back on this wooden board. So I make that clear to you to understand that this place is not for soldiers to guard them, but is for the lower level of authority. Here we have the higher level of authority. Is the elevated section, is the actual grandstand, the Bema, which was decorated with marble like you see here all around. And on the other side we have symmetrical, the same thing. Now, of the whole monument. At the Bema. In front of every Bema was such a column. Look here, the hall. This hall is here because here was fixed a ring. Beside this column stood the friends and the enemies of the Romans. The friends and the enemies. And if somebody was proved friend, was invited to go up there and to be glorified and to be promoted as the model of the citizen the Romans liked to. And the city was clapping and cheering, willingly or not, more unwillingly. If somebody was proved that was enemy to them, in front of the eyes of the entire city, was stripped off completely here and totally naked, he was obliged to kneel down and to embrace this column. His arms were tied in here and the humiliation started. Have you seen the movie The Passion of Jesus Christ? Do you remember this column in that movie? Now, been here, and because that was a standard for all the cities, you understand one of the major mistakes of Mel Gibson. Placing this column in the yard of the Praetorium where never was. We are going in the shade, to find where this term, the identity of this monument, is mentioned in the New Testament. But before, I would like us to go up there to see this place all around as the Roman authority, as the Roman proconsul. So you will have a better idea, more clear idea about the function of this monument.
All right, yeah, you're good.
Frenemies.
Remember, you have to get back up also.
We have two totally different building styles. This one and this one. Because it was known what had happened here to Apostle Paul, after Theodosius, the Bema was abolished, and at the top of the Bema was built a chapel. And this wall belongs to the chapel. So we are not going to speak about the chapel at all. We are going to move to the marble, which identifies the function of this place with the Bema. And we start from this place. Look this corner here. All the floor here was paved like this. And we have here seats, official seats. There we have a pillar, and another pillar was here. In both the pillars we see some holes. From these holes we know that here was an iron gate. The same thing was on the other side symmetrically. But we don't have that level because here the place was totally cleared off to be the altar of the chapel. From the lower level of marble we have these holes, from which we know that also here was a gate like this, symmetrical. And imagine there again seats like this corner. So somebody could enter to this area either from this entrance or the other entrance. Now the question is, what was in the middle of these two entrances? Look here. You see that? That says that here we have a marble wall. A marble wall. In between of the two entrances we have a marble wall. In front of the marble wall here was the throne of the Roman proconsul. The throne of the Roman proconsul, which was the supreme provincial authority. Here I would like to remind you a story from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 25. Jesus says that the day will come and the Son of Man will sit on his own throne, and in front of him will be gathered not the citizens of a city, but all the nations. And he is going to divide them like the shepherd divides the sheep from the goats. We have to say something which is very important. The sheep and the goats look alike to each other very much. And they are all the day together, but they don't match. Never you will see a ram going to the goats, and never you will see a male goat going to the sheep. They are of totally two different identities, natures. And the Son of Man is going to divide the nations like the shepherd divides these two groups of animals, which look alike to each other, but they are different. Now, what is going to be the criterion of this distinction? The criterion of this distinction is relations. Is not the law of Moses. Is not any penal law. But the question, I was thirsty, I was naked, I was sick. Your response to my need reveals your identity. And you know something else? Never a good goat becomes a sheep. And never a bad sheep becomes a goat. We are going there where this pine tree is. Yeah, there are some places. Oh, I see all you are sitting here and we are alone, so we can continue here. Sorry, we don't move. The term Bema in the New Testament. The term Bema in the New Testament in first in the Gospels is mentioned only 2 times by the 2 eyewitnesses of the trial of Jesus Christ. Who are they? Who are the writers of the Gospels? Who were eyewitnesses of what they described? Matthew and John. Matthew and John. Matthew so says, Pilate was upon the Bema. You are upon the Bema now. When his wife sent to him a message about Jesus. The story is well known. John says that Pilate from the Bema pronounced the conviction of Jesus and gave him to be crucified. Imagine Pilate here, Jesus beside him, and all the crowd in the square. This term now in the book of Acts. Open your Bible, Acts 18, and I would like one of us to read from 1 through 17.
A native of Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because Claudius had ordered all Jews to leave Rome. Paul went to see them, and because he was a tent maker, as they were, he stayed and worked with them. Every Sabbath, he reasoned in the synagogue, trying to persuade Jews and Greeks. When Silas and Timothy came from Macedonia, Paul devoted himself exclusively to preaching, testifying to the Jews that Jesus was the Messiah. But when they opposed Paul and became abusive, he shook off his clothes in protest and said to them, "Your blood be on your own heads. I am innocent of it. From now on, I will go to the Gentiles." Then Paul left the synagogue and went next door to the house of Titus, Justus, a worshiper of God. Crispus, the synagogue leader, and his entire household believed in the Lord. Many of the Corinthians who heard Paul believed and were baptized. One night, the Lord spoke to Paul in a vision. "Do not be afraid. Keep on speaking. Do not be silent. For I am with you, and no one is going to attack and harm you, because I have many people in this city." So Paul stayed in Corinth for 1.5 years, teaching them the word of God. While Galileo was proconsul of Achaia, the Jews of Corinth made a united attack on Paul and brought him to a place of judgment.
Excuse me for the interruption. Now I need the help of somebody who spells Greek. Who is the one who is going to spell a Greek word for us with 4 letters only?
Bema. B-E-M-A.
Yes. Yes. the place of judge or judgment, yeah, in Greek is Bema. And now we are upon the Bema. We are there where the proconsul Gallio used to be. Paul was brought in front of him. Who do you think Paul was in that event? You are where Gallio was, literally. Not metaphorically. And the question is, where Paul stood to face Gallio? Down below where?
By the rock.
By the pillar. Now, all what she is going to read took place between the Bema and the pillar. Go on.
This man, they charge, is persuading the people to worship God in ways contrary to the law. Just as Paul was about to speak, Gallio said to them, if you Jews were making a complaint about some misdemeanor or serious crime, it would be reasonable for me to listen to you. But since it involves questions about words and names and your law, settle the matter yourselves. I will not be judged of such things. So he drove them off.
The Bema. Go on.
Then the crowd there turned on Sosthenes, the synagogue leader, and beat him in front of
The Bema.
the Bema.
Yes.
Beat him in front of the Bema. Okay.
Yes.
Gallio showed no concern whatsoever.
Yes. Now, this term is mentioned 2 more times. Is mentioned by Paul in 2 of his letters, who were written right after this event. And he uses this place on which we are now to make an illustration of a heavenly reality. And these 2 times are, first, Romans 14, 10 and 11. Romans 14, 10 and 11. Who is going to read it?
But why doest thou judge thy brother? Or why doest thou set at naught thy brother? For
Just a moment. Here is the phrase, why you look down to your brother.
For we shall all stand before the judgment seat
Before
of
the
Christ.
Bema of Christ. Where this column is. And Christ is going to be here. Go on.
For it is written, as I live, saith the Lord, every knee shall bow to
Every knee shall bow. There where this column is, friends and enemies, willingly or by force, all bow down.
and every tongue shall confess to God.
And every tongue shall confess that here is the ruler, the Lord. The last time is 2 Corinthians 5:10.
Fantastic, isn't it?
Wow.
2 Corinthians 5:10.
Yes?
Let's go. For we must all appear before the Bema of Christ. Changing my NIV.
Go on.
So that each of us may receive what is due
May
us
receive. in the original text is may offer, bring in front all the proofs that he's a friend, or they will become in front the disproofs, proving that he's an enemy,
For the things done while in the body, whether good or bad.
to be rewarded or humiliated. The verb is not to receive, somebody to receive because of the deeds he has done. The original is to bring in front the works and the words and the deeds that prove who he is friend or enemy, to be accordingly humiliated or rewarded.
What was the word instead of received again?
To bring in front is exactly the opposite. You bring your proofs, the deed you have done, the deeds you have done, the words you have said, which prove that with the authority you are a friend, not an enemy. Remember, I was thirsty, I was naked, I was sick, Now, I would like to give you 2 minutes free time, you to see this place by yourself and to meditate, to see it from above, from below, from all the corners, and to remember 3 different events. Number 1, the trial of Jesus Christ, which took place in Jerusalem on a place identical to this here. To what happened to Paul at this actual place we are now, and the eschatological meaning of this monument for your own personal life. Remembering the words of Paul that each one of us is going to stand in front of the Bema in the eyes of the entire universe all around. Remember, one day the Son of Man is going to divide the nations from his own Bema into goats and sheep. And then I'll meet you there where this pine tree is.